The suitcase wasn't hers. That was the first thing I noticed when I opened my front door that Tuesday evening. The expensive leather, the designer brand stitched into the corner, the way it sat there in my living room like it owned the place. My sister Rachel never owned anything that cost more than $50 in her entire life. "Did you ask the owner of this house for permission?" The words left my mouth before I could stop them. My grocery bags hung heavy from my arms, cutting into my skin, but I didn't move. I just stood there in the doorway of my own home, staring at the woman I'd known for 43 years, and suddenly she looked like a complete stranger. Rachel turned from the window where she'd been standing, her silhouette dark against the afternoon light. When she smiled, it didn't reach her eyes. "Hey, Diane, I didn't hear you come in." "That's because you weren't supposed to be here." I stepped inside and let the door close behind me with a soft click that somehow sounded too loud in the silence. "How did you even get in?" She held up a key, dangling it between her fingers like a trophy. "You gave me a spare, remember? 3 years ago when you had that kidney stone and needed someone to water your plants." I remembered. I also remembered asking for that key back 6 months later. But here it was, still in her possession, still giving her access to my life whenever she decided she needed it. Rachel. I set the grocery bags on the dining table with more force than necessary. A can rolled out and clattered across the wooden surface. "What are you doing here?" "I need to stay for a while." She said it casually, like she was asking to borrow a cup of sugar, not announcing she was moving into my home without invitation. "Just a few weeks, maybe a month, 2 at the most." The suitcase sat between us like evidence at a crime scene. But it was the other details I started noticing now. The second suitcase by the hallway. The designer handbag on my couch. The coat draped over my favorite armchair. Rachel had made herself comfortable, settled in, claimed territory, all before I'd even known she was here. "Rachel, you can't just move into my house without asking me first." My voice was steady, but inside I felt something shifting, something that had been dormant for years, finally waking up. "We're sisters, Di. Family doesn't need permission." She walked toward the kitchen, opened my refrigerator like she lived here, pulled out a bottle of water I'd bought that morning. "Besides, you have all this space, 2 empty bedrooms. It's not like I'm inconveniencing you." Not inconveniencing me. As if my home, my sanctuary, the place where I'd finally found peace after my divorce 3 years ago, was just empty space waiting to be filled by whoever needed it. As if my life was a resource anyone could tap into without consideration. I followed her into the kitchen, my footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. "Rachel, I don't care if we're family. You should have called. You should have asked. You can't just show up with expensive luggage and assume you can stay here." "Expensive luggage?" She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Di, these are just suitcases. Don't be dramatic." "Those suitcases cost more than my entire month's salary. Where did you get the money for them?" The question hung in the air between us. Rachel's smile faltered for just a second, a crack in the perfect facade. "I've been saving. Is that a crime?" But I knew my sister. Rachel had been broke for as long as I could remember. She worked part-time at a bookstore, lived in a tiny studio apartment across town, and called me every other month asking to borrow money for rent. The woman standing in my kitchen, wearing designer clothes and carrying $1,000 luggage, was not the sister I knew. "What's really going on, Rachel?" I stepped closer, studying her face. We looked alike. Everyone always said so. Same dark hair, same green eyes, same sharp jawline. But right now, looking at her, I saw something different, something harder, something calculating. "Nothing's going on. I just needed a break from my place. The landlord's doing renovations, and it's too noisy. I figured I could crash here for a bit." "You figured wrong." The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't take them back. "I'm sorry. But you need to find somewhere else to stay. A hotel, maybe. Or a friend's place. Rachel's expression changed. The friendly mask slipped away, replaced by something colder. Are you seriously kicking me out right now? Your own sister. I'm not kicking you out because you were never invited in. I walked back to the living room, toward those expensive suitcases that didn't belong. I'll help you carry these to your car. I don't have a car. Then I'll call you an Uber. Diane. Rachel's voice dropped low, almost dangerous. I'm staying, whether you like it or not. I turned around slowly, my hand still on one of the suitcases. Excuse me? You heard me. I'm not leaving. I need to be here right now, and if you were any kind of sister, you'd understand that. The audacity of it took my breath away. If I were any kind of sister? Rachel, you broke into my house, moved yourself in without permission, and now you're telling me I don't have a choice? I didn't break in. I used a key you gave me. A key you were supposed to return 3 years ago. We stood there, facing each other across my living room, and for the first time in our lives, I saw my sister as what she really was. Not family, not someone I could trust, but someone who thought my kindness was weakness, my generosity was obligation, my home was hers to claim whenever convenient. Fine. Rachel's voice was cold now. If that's how you want to play this, then let's talk about what you owe me. What I owe you? All those years I covered for you with Mom and Dad. All those times I lied to protect you. All those secrets I kept. You think that doesn't count for something? My blood ran cold. That was 20 years ago, Rachel. We were kids. Doesn't matter. You owe me, Di, and right now, I'm collecting. She walked past me, grabbed the handle of the larger suitcase, and started dragging it down the hallway toward my guest room. I'll take the room on the left. Don't worry. I'll try not to be too much trouble. I stood there, frozen, watching my sister disappear into my guest room like she owned it. Every instinct screamed at me to stop her, to physically drag her and her expensive luggage out of my house. But something else held me back. Something about the way she'd mentioned those old secrets. Something about the desperation hidden beneath her arrogance. Something was very wrong here. I walked to the guest room doorway. Rachel was already unpacking, laying clothes out on the bed with practiced efficiency. What's really going on? I asked quietly. Why are you really here? She didn't look at me, just kept unpacking. I told you. Renovations. Rachel, drop it, Diane. I can't drop it. This is my house. You're my sister. Tell me the truth. Finally, she stopped. Her hands hovered over the suitcase, trembling slightly. When she looked up at me, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. I'm in trouble, she whispered. What kind of trouble? The kind that gets people killed if they're not careful. My heart started pounding. Rachel, what did you do? Nothing. I didn't do anything. But I found something. Something that's going to destroy everything. And the people involved, they can't know I have it. They can't know where I am. She reached into the suitcase and pulled out a manila envelope, thick with documents. This is why I'm here, Di. This is why I need you. Because in 3 days, I'm going to ruin someone's life, and I need to make sure they don't ruin mine first. I stared at the envelope in her hands, my mind racing. Rachel, if you're in danger, we need to call the police. No police. Her voice was sharp. No one can know I'm here. Not the police, not our friends, not even Mom and Dad. Especially not... She trailed off, her eyes darting to the window like she expected someone to be watching. Especially not who? Your husband. The words hit me like a physical blow. My ex-husband. We've been divorced for 3 years. I know, and I know why. Rachel's smile was bitter now, twisted. I know everything, Di. That's the problem. I know everything, and now I can't unknow it. She opened the envelope and pulled out a photograph. When I saw it, my legs nearly gave out. It was Michael, my ex-husband Michael. But he wasn't alone. He was standing next to a woman who looked exactly like Rachel. Same hair, same face, same everything. Except it wasn't Rachel, because Rachel was standing right in front of me. "Who is that?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. Rachel's eyes met mine, and in them I saw the truth before she even spoke the words. "That's our sister Di, the one Mom and Dad never told us about. The one who's been living your life while you've been living hers. And 3 months ago, she married your ex-husband." The room started spinning. I grabbed the door frame to steady myself. "That's impossible." "Is it? Think about it. Really think about it. All those times Michael seemed different. All those moments when you felt like you were going crazy because his stories didn't match up. All those gaps in your marriage that never made sense." "No." But even as I said it, memories were flooding back. Michael coming home late, smelling different. Michael forgetting conversations we'd supposedly had. Michael calling me by a name that wasn't mine, then claiming I'd misheard him. "Her name is Rebecca," Rachel continued, her voice relentless. "And she's been switching places with me for the last 5 years. Sometimes she's Rachel, and I'm locked away somewhere. Sometimes I'm Rachel, and she's free. But the whole time, Di, the whole time she's been sleeping with your husband, building a relationship with him, planning to take everything you have." I sank down onto the floor, my back against the wall. "Why? Why would she do this?" "Because that's what she does. That's what she's always done. Mom and Dad gave her up for adoption when we were babies because they couldn't afford 3 kids. She grew up in the system, got out when she was 18, and spent the next 20 years hunting us down, finding out everything about our lives, learning how to become us." Rachel knelt down beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "And now she has everything, Di. Your husband, your old house, your bank accounts. She's been slowly draining everything while pretending to be me, and I've been too scared to stop her because every time I try, she threatens to kill me. She threatened to kill both of us, the police," I managed to say. "We go to the police right now." "And tell them what? That I have an identical sister who's been impersonating me? They'll think I'm insane. We need proof, real proof. That's what's in this envelope. Bank records, photographs, DNA tests. Everything we need to prove Rebecca exists and what she's been doing." I looked at the envelope, then at my sister, then at the expensive suitcases that suddenly made horrible sense. "Those aren't your suitcases." "No, they're Rebecca's. I stole them yesterday when she thought I was locked in the basement. She has an apartment downtown, a place she keeps all her different identities. These suitcases have everything. Passports under different names, credit cards, jewelry she's stolen from both of us over the years. How long have you known?" 6 months. That's when I finally figured it out. That's when I found her apartment and realized what she'd been doing. I've been gathering evidence ever since, waiting for the right moment to expose her. But yesterday I overheard her on the phone. She's planning something, Di, something big, and I think it involves you. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands. It was a text from an unknown number. Just 4 words, but they made my blood run ice cold. "I know she's there." Rachel saw the message and went pale. "We need to leave. Right now. We need to grab everything and go." "Go where?" "Anywhere but here. Because if Rebecca knows I'm with you, then she knows I have the evidence, and she'll do anything to get it back." But before we could move, before we could even stand up, we heard it. The sound that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. The sound of a key turning in my front door lock, the door I had locked when I came home, the door that only one other person had a key to, my ex-husband Michael. And he was here. Rachel grabbed my arm, her fingernails digging into my skin hard enough to leave marks. "The bedroom, now." Her voice was barely a whisper, urgent and terrified. We scrambled to our feet, but it was too late. The front door swung open, and there he stood. Michael, my ex-husband of 3 years, the man I'd spent 7 years married to, the man I thought I knew better than anyone. Except now, looking at him standing in my doorway with a key he shouldn't have, I realized I'd never known him at all. Diane. His voice was smooth, casual, like he'd just stopped by for coffee. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. My mouth had gone dry. I couldn't speak, couldn't think. Rachel's hand was still on my arm, her grip so tight I could feel my pulse pounding against her fingers. Michael. I finally managed to get the word out. What are you doing here? How did you get in? He held up a key, the same casual gesture Rachel had made an hour earlier. You never asked for this back when we divorced. I figured you forgot about it. But I hadn't forgotten. I'd specifically asked him to return all keys to the house during the divorce proceedings. My lawyer had made a checklist. The keys were on it. Michael had signed a document saying he'd returned them. He'd lied. How many times over the years had he lied? How many times had he let himself into my house without my knowledge? You need to leave. My voice was stronger now, fueled by a rage that was finally surfacing after years of being buried. Get out of my house. I just need a minute of your time. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The sound of the lock clicking made my heart race. I need to talk to you about something important. There's nothing important we need to discuss. We've been divorced for 3 years. Whatever you have to say, you can email it to me through my lawyer. His eyes shifted to Rachel, who was still pressed against my side. Something flickered across his face. Recognition? Confusion? Fear? Hello, Rachel. Long time no see. Rachel didn't respond. I could feel her whole body trembling. Actually, Michael continued, his tone changing, becoming harder, I'm not here to talk to you, Diane. I'm here for her. He pointed at Rachel. She has something that belongs to me, and I'd like it back. I don't know what you're talking about. My voice was steady, even though inside I was screaming. Rachel just got here. She doesn't have anything of yours. Really? So she didn't mention the suitcases, the documents, the evidence she's been collecting for the past 6 months? He took another step forward. Come on, Rachel. Let's not play games. Give me the envelope and I'll leave you both alone. Get out. I moved in front of Rachel, putting myself between her and Michael. Get out of my house right now, or I'm calling the police. The police? Michael laughed, but there was no humor in it. And tell them what? That your sister broke into your house and stole property that doesn't belong to her? Please call them. I'd love to explain to the cops how Rachel has been harassing me and my wife for months. Your wife? The words felt like acid in my mouth. You're married again? 2 months ago. Beautiful ceremony. Small, intimate. You would have loved it. His smile was cruel. Of course you weren't invited. But then again, neither was Rachel. Funny how that worked out. Rachel's grip on my arm loosened. I turned to look at her and saw tears streaming down her face. I tried to tell you, she whispered. I tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen. You never listen. Warn me about what? But even as I asked, pieces were falling into place. The secret phone, calls Rachel had made last year, the strange messages she'd sent me that I'd dismissed as her being dramatic, the time she'd shown up at my door at 3 a.m, begging me to believe her about something I couldn't even remember now because I'd been too tired to pay attention. Your sister has been trying to convince everyone that I'm involved in some kind of conspiracy, Michael said, walking further into my living room, making himself comfortable on my couch. She's been telling people that my wife isn't who she says she is, that there's some elaborate identity theft scheme going on. Honestly, it would be funny if it wasn't so sad. Rachel always did have an active imagination. It's not imagination, Rachel said, her voice stronger now. Show her, Michael. Show her the photograph you have in your wallet, the one of you and Rebecca on your wedding day, the one where she's wearing the same dress Diane wore when you two got married. The same dress, the same voice, lacked conviction. The divorce settlement was approved by a judge. Everything was legal. Legal doesn't mean honest, I said quietly. How much did you take, Michael? How much money disappeared from our joint accounts in those final months before the divorce was finalized? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I could see it in his eyes. Every late night, every forgotten conversation, every time he'd made me feel crazy for questioning him. It had all been real. All of it. I want you to leave now, I said. And I want you to give me that key. Diane, you're making a mistake. If you listen to Rachel, if you believe these paranoid delusions, you're going to ruin your own life. My life was already ruined. 3 years ago, when you convinced me our marriage was over, when you made me believe I was the problem, when you gaslighted me into thinking I was losing my mind, you did that, Michael, you and Rebecca together. I walked to the door and opened it. Get out. He didn't move. Instead, he pulled out his phone, typed something, and within seconds I heard another phone buzz. It was coming from Rachel's purse. Rachel's eyes went wide with horror. She dug through her bag and pulled out a phone I'd never seen before. The screen showed a message from Michael. 3 words that made my blood run cold. She knows everything. That's not my phone, Rachel said desperately. I've never seen that phone before. Michael, you planted it. When did you plant it? But I already knew the answer. The suitcases. Michael had been in my house before. Maybe today, maybe yesterday. He'd planted the phone in Rachel's purse, probably when she wasn't looking. Evidence. He was building evidence against her. Venue. The same flowers. Everything identical except the face. Michael's expression didn't change, but I saw his hand move toward his jacket pocket. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Because Rebecca told you about us. She told you she had 2 sisters, identical twins she'd been separated from at birth. She told you her whole plan, didn't she? How she was going to become us, take our lives, take everything we had. And you helped her do it. The room felt like it was closing in on me. I looked at Michael, really looked at him, and saw the truth written on his face. The guilt, the recognition, the calculation of someone trying to figure out how much to admit and how much to deny. You knew. My voice came out flat, emotionless. You knew there were 3 of us, and you never told me. Diane, listen to me. Michael stood up, his hands raised like he was approaching a dangerous animal. Whatever Rachel has told you, whatever she's shown you, it's not what you think. Yes, Rebecca mentioned she had sisters. Yes, she looks like Rachel. But that doesn't mean there's some sinister plot. Siblings look alike. That's normal. Identical triplets aren't normal, Rachel shot back. And you know exactly what Rebecca's been doing because you've been helping her. All those times you told Diane you were working late, you were with Rebecca. All those business trips, those weekend conferences, you were teaching Rebecca how to be Diane, how to talk like her, act like her, forge her signature. You were the one who helped Rebecca drain Diane's accounts after the divorce. That's insane. But you see? Michael's voice was triumphant. She's been in contact with me this whole time. This entire performance, this whole story about Rebecca and conspiracies. It's all been Rachel trying to manipulate you. She's the one who's been stealing from you, Diane. She's the one who's been impersonating you. And now she's trying to blame it on some imaginary sister so she can get away with it. That's not true. Rachel's voice cracked. Diane, you have to believe me. I would never hurt you. You're my sister, my real sister, the only family I have left. I looked between them. Michael with his confident smile and planted evidence. Rachel with her desperate eyes and her stolen suitcases. One of them was lying. Maybe both of them were lying. But I knew one thing for certain. I knew my sister. I'd known her my entire life. And the woman standing next to me, trembling and terrified, was Rachel. My real Rachel, which meant everything else she'd said was true too. Michael, I'm going to ask you one more time to leave. If you don't, I'm calling the police and reporting you for breaking and entering. I have a key. That you were supposed to return 3 years ago. That you kept illegally. That you've been using to enter my home without permission. I'm sure the police will be very interested in that." For the first time, Michael's confidence wavered. He looked at his phone, then at Rachel, then back at me. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Rebecca will be very disappointed to hear you're choosing to believe Rachel's fantasy. She was hoping you'd be smarter than this." "Rebecca can be disappointed all she wants. Tell her I said hello. Tell her I'm looking forward to meeting her, face to face, in court." Michael's jaw tightened. Without another word, he turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him so hard the pictures on my wall rattled. The moment he was gone, Rachel collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. I locked the door, engaged the deadbolt, and put the security chain on for good measure. Then I sat down next to my sister and put my arm around her shoulders. "Tell me everything," I said softly, "from the beginning, every single detail, and don't leave anything out." Rachel wiped her eyes, took a shaky breath, and began to speak. "It started 5 years ago. I was working at the bookstore, same as always, when this woman came in. She looked exactly like me, I mean exactly. Same height, same face, same everything. At first I thought I was looking at a mirror, but then she smiled, and I knew. I knew she was real." She pulled the envelope from her purse and spread the documents across my living room floor. Bank statements, photographs, DNA test results, legal documents I didn't understand. "Her name is Rebecca Ann Morrison. She was born the same day as us, same hospital, same time. Mom and Dad gave her up for adoption because they couldn't afford 3 babies. They kept us and gave her away, and she's spent her entire adult life making us pay for that choice." I picked up one of the photographs. 3 babies in a hospital nursery, each wearing identical pink bracelets. Written on the back in faded ink were 3 names: Diane Marie Holloway, Rachel Elizabeth Holloway, and Rebecca Ann Holloway. Mom and Dad know about this? Not anymore. I tried to tell them 2 years ago. They denied everything. Said I was making it up, that the stress of my life was making me delusional. But I found the adoption papers in their attic, hidden in a box marked Christmas decorations. They knew, Di. They always knew. And they chose to keep it secret, to pretend Rebecca never existed. I stared at the photograph of 3 identical babies and felt something inside me break. My whole life had been a lie. Every memory, every moment, every belief I had about my family was built on a foundation of deception. How did she find us? Facebook, social media, the internet makes it too easy to find people now. She started following us 5 years ago, learning our patterns, our habits, our lives. And then she started replacing us, little by little. She'd show up somewhere pretending to be me, and people would believe her because why wouldn't they? We're identical. Then she'd disappear, and I'd come back, and everyone would tell me about conversations I didn't remember having, places I didn't remember going. I thought I was losing my mind, and Michael. She met him at one of your work parties 4 years ago. She pretended to be you, flirted with him, gave him her number, started an affair. By the time you found out something was wrong with your marriage, Rebecca had already convinced Michael that she was the real you, that you were the imposter. That's why the divorce happened, Di. Michael didn't leave you for another woman. He left you for the woman he thought was you. The pieces were falling into place now, creating a picture so horrifying I could barely process it. So when I signed the divorce papers, you were signing away your rights to everything. Your house, your money, your entire identity. Rebecca has it all now. She is you, legally. And there's nothing we can do about it, because every document, every signature, every legal proceeding was done with you standing right there. How do we prove it wasn't you when you were physically present? I stood up, my legs shaky, and walked to the window. Outside, the street looked normal. People walking their dogs, kids riding bikes, the world continuing on like everything was fine. But nothing was fine. Nothing would ever be fine again. "The DNA tests," I said, turning back to Rachel. "You said you have DNA tests. Those can prove we're triplets. That can prove Rebecca exists." "I have them, but they only prove that 3 people with identical DNA exist. They don't prove which one of us is which. And Rebecca has been very careful to make sure she's established herself as Diane Holloway in every legal way possible. She has your driver's license, your passport, your social security card. She's even been to your doctor, using your insurance, building a medical history. If we go to the police, if we go to court, it's going to be our word against hers. And she has Michael backing her up." The hopelessness of it hit me like a wave. How do you prove you're yourself when someone else has stolen not just your identity, but your entire life? There has to be a way. I started pacing the room, my mind racing through possibilities. Fingerprints. We have different fingerprints, right? Even identical triplets have different fingerprints. Rachel shook her head slowly. "Rebecca thought of that. 2 years ago, you remember when you had that kitchen accident? When you sliced your hand open cutting vegetables and had to get stitches?" I did remember. I'd been making dinner, the knife had slipped, and I'd ended up in the emergency room with a deep gash across my palm. 8 stitches. The scar was still there, a thin white line I looked at every day. "That wasn't an accident," Rachel said quietly. "Rebecca broke into your house that night. She drugged your wine while you were cooking. You were already impaired when you picked up that knife. She wanted you to cut yourself. She needed you to damage your fingerprints." I looked down at my right hand, at the scar I'd always thought was just bad luck. Why? Because 6 months before that, she'd done the same thing to herself. Same hand, same location, same type of injury. She went to a different hospital, used a fake name, but she made sure the injury was identical to what yours would be. And then she waited. She waited until your hand healed exactly the same way hers did. Now our fingerprints are too similar to tell apart. Any scanner that reads mine will read hers too. The calculation of it, the cold precision, made my stomach turn. What about our teeth? Dental records are unique. She's been going to your dentist for the past 3 years, booking appointments in your name. She even had dental work done, matching procedures to create similar x-rays. Dr. Peterson thinks he's been seeing you this whole time, but half those appointments were Rebecca. Every avenue I could think of, every possible way to prove my identity, Rebecca had already blocked it. She'd been planning this for years, methodically eliminating every way I could fight back. So we're just supposed to give up? Let her have everything? No. Rachel stood up, wiping the last of her tears away. There was a hardness in her eyes now, a determination I'd never seen before. We're going to beat her at her own game, but we have to be smart about it, smarter than she is. How? She made one mistake, just one, and it's going to cost her everything. Rachel pulled out another document from the envelope, this one covered in legal terminology I didn't understand. Do you remember your grandmother's will? The one that left you the lake house upstate? I nodded. Grandma Helen had died 5 years ago, leaving me her summer home in her will. But the property was still tied up in probate, some legal complication about the deed that I'd never fully understood. The house was supposed to be transferred to you 3 years ago, but there was a problem with the paperwork. Someone filed a counterclaim saying they were the rightful heir. The case has been stuck in legal limbo ever since. Let me guess, Rebecca filed the counterclaim. Yes. But here's the thing, to file that claim, she had to appear in court, in person, and the court keeps records, video recordings of all proceedings. Rebecca appeared as you, claiming she was Diane Holloway and that she was the rightful heir to the property. But you also appeared, the real you, contesting her claim. The court has footage of both of you in the same courtroom on the same day. My heart started racing. Wait, I never went to court for that. I never even knew there was a hearing. Exactly. Because Rebecca made sure you didn't know. She intercepted all the legal notices, forged your signature on documents saying you didn't need to appear. But here's the beautiful part. The judge got suspicious. He thought it was strange that Diane Holloway was both claiming and contesting the same property. So he ordered a postponement and requested additional verification of identity. Rachel's smile was grim. That hearing is scheduled for next week. Both Diane Holloways are required to appear with original birth, certificates, social security cards, and 2 forms of government ID. And the judge has ordered a DNA test on the spot to be witnessed by court officials to determine which claimant is legitimate. But you said the DNA tests don't prove anything. We're all identical. They don't prove who is who. But they do prove that 3 people with identical DNA exist. And once we prove that, once we show the judge that there are 3 of us, the whole house of cards falls apart. Every document Rebecca has signed, every legal proceeding she's been part of, every claim she's made becomes questionable. We can reopen the divorce, challenge the property settlements, freeze all the accounts. Everything she's stolen, we can fight to get back. Hope flickered in my chest for the first time since this nightmare began. So we go to the hearing next week. We bring all 3 of us. We force the court to acknowledge that Rebecca exists. Not just acknowledge her, we trap her. Because here's what Rebecca doesn't know. I've been in contact with the court clerk for the past 2 months. I explained the situation, showed her some of the evidence, convinced her to help me. Next week's hearing isn't just about the lake house, it's about exposing everything Rebecca has done. The fraud, the identity theft, the forgery, everything. And you're sure this will work? Rachel's confidence wavered for just a second. I'm sure it's our only chance, but there's a problem. We need Rebecca to show up to that hearing. If she suspects anything, if Michael warns her, she'll disappear. She has multiple identities, multiple passports. She could be out of the country before we even realize she's gone. So we have to make sure she doesn't know we're coming. We have to do more than that. We have to make her believe she's already won. Rachel pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages. They were from Michael to a number I didn't recognize, but the content made everything clear. He was updating Rebecca on everything that had happened tonight, telling her that Rachel had showed up at my house with evidence, telling her that I'd kicked him out, telling her that we were planning something. He's been reporting to her this whole time, I said, reading through the messages. Every word we said, he's telling her. Good. That's exactly what we want, because now we're going to feed him false information. We're going to make Rebecca think we're planning to go to the police tomorrow morning with all our evidence. We're going to make her panic. And when she panics, she'll try to run, but she won't be able to, because I've already flagged her passports with customs. The court clerk helped me with that too. Every identity Rebecca has, every name she uses, they're all on a watch list now. If she tries to leave the country, she'll be detained for questioning. And once they start asking questions, once they start comparing her documents to yours, the whole scheme unravels. I stared at my sister with new respect. You've been planning this for months. 6 months. Ever since I found her apartment and realized the full scope of what she'd been doing. I knew we couldn't just go to the police. We needed ironclad proof. We needed to catch her in an act that she couldn't explain, away. And next week's hearing is our chance. So what do we do now? Now we wait. We let Michael report back to Rebecca that we're going to the police. We let her make her move. And when she does, we'll be ready. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything I'd learned. I had a sister I'd never known existed. A sister who hated me enough to steal my entire life. A sister who had been so close, so present, that I'd been living with the consequences of her actions without even knowing she was there. Around 2 a.m, I heard a sound outside. A car pulling up to the curb, its engine idling. I got up and looked out the window, careful to stay hidden behind the curtain. It was a black sedan, expensive, with tinted windows. As I watched, the back door opened and a woman stepped out. Even from a distance, even in the dark, I knew who she was. It was like looking in a mirror. Same hair, same build, same way of moving. But there was something different about her. Something harder, something that marked her as other. Rebecca stood on the sidewalk, looking up at my house. She was holding a phone to her ear, talking to someone. Even though I couldn't hear the words, I could see the anger in her body language. Sharp gestures, tense shoulders, the way she kept glancing at the front door like she was deciding whether to come in. Then she ended the call, got back in the car, and drove away. But not before she looked directly at my bedroom window. For just a second, our eyes met, and I saw something in her face that terrified me more than anything else that had happened. Recognition, understanding, and a promise that this was far from over. I ran to Rachel's room, shaking her awake. She was here. Rebecca was here. She knows where we are. Rachel sat up immediately, fully alert despite having been asleep seconds ago. Did she try to come in? No. She just looked. But Rachel, the way she looked at me, she knows we're planning something. What if she doesn't wait until next week? What if she comes after us now? Then we move up our timeline. We can't wait for the court hearing. We need to act now. Act how? Rachel grabbed her laptop from the nightstand and opened it, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Remember how I said I've been gathering evidence for 6 months? I haven't just been collecting documents. I've been building a case, a complete, comprehensive case that proves Rebecca exists and shows everything she's done. Bank fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, everything. The screen filled with folders, each one labeled and organized, financial records, video footage, photographs, witness statements. Years of Rebecca's life, documented and cross-referenced. I was going to present all of this at the hearing next week, but if Rebecca is getting desperate, if she's willing to come here tonight, then we need to force her hand. We need to make her expose herself. How do we do that? Rachel's smile was predatory. We give her what she wants. We make her think she can destroy the evidence. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to send Michael a message. I'm going to tell him that all the evidence is stored in one place, a storage unit downtown, Unit 347. I'm going to tell him that we're planning to move it tomorrow afternoon, that we're worried about keeping it at your house. But that's not where the evidence actually is, right? The evidence is in 3 different locations. One set is in a safe deposit box at a bank. One set is uploaded to a secure cloud server with multiple backups. And one set is with my lawyer, sealed in an envelope with instructions to open it if anything happens to either of us. The storage unit has nothing but decoy documents, papers that look important but are actually meaningless. So when Rebecca breaks into the storage unit, we'll have her on camera, breaking and entering, attempted theft, destruction of evidence, and more importantly, we'll have proof that she exists, proof that can't be explained away. Because how else would she know about the storage unit unless she was working with Michael? Unless she was the person he's been reporting to? Unless she's the 3rd sister we've been talking about? It was risky, dangerous, even. But it was also brilliant. When do we do this? I send the message to Michael in 3 hours, at 5 in the morning, when he's likely to be asleep. By the time he wakes up and reads it, we'll already be in position at the storage facility. We'll have cameras set up. We'll have witnesses ready. And when Rebecca shows up, we'll finally have the proof we need to destroy her. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw the strength I'd never noticed before. All these years, I'd thought Rachel was the fragile one, the one who needed protecting. But she'd been protecting me this whole time, fighting a battle I didn't even know existed. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for not giving up on me, for believing I was worth saving." Rachel took my hand and squeezed it. "You're my sister, my real sister, the only family I have left that actually wants me. I would do anything to keep you safe." We spent the next 3 hours preparing. Rachel sent the message to Michael at exactly 5 a.m. Then we drove across town to the storage facility, a run-down building in an industrial area that Rachel had rented specifically for this purpose. She'd already installed hidden cameras in Unit 347, tiny devices that would capture everything from multiple angles. We set up in an empty unit across the hall, where we could watch the feeds on Rachel's laptop. And then we waited. 6 a.m. passed. 7 a.m. 8 a.m. I was starting to think Rebecca wouldn't take the bait when Rachel suddenly grabbed my arm. Look, on camera 3. A figure had entered the building, dressed in black, face partially hidden by a hood, moving with practiced stealth. But I knew that walk. I'd seen it just hours ago, standing outside my house. Rebecca. She approached Unit 347, looked around to make sure no one was watching, and pulled out a set of lockpicks. Within 30 seconds, she had the door open. She slipped inside, and we watched on the camera feed as she began searching through the boxes Rachel had planted. Documents flew as she worked quickly, efficiently, looking for anything that mentioned her name. And then she found it. A folder labeled Rebecca Morrison, Evidence of Fraud. She opened it, started reading, and her face changed. Shock first, then understanding, then rage. Because what she was reading wasn't evidence at all. It was a letter. A letter from Rachel explaining everything, explaining that this was a trap, explaining that she was being recorded, explaining that we knew exactly what she'd done and that we had proof she could never destroy, explaining that it was over. Rebecca looked directly at the camera, not searching for it, not discovering it by accident, but looking straight at it like she'd known it was there all along. And then she smiled. It was my smile, the same smile I'd practiced in mirrors my whole life, the same expression I made when I was genuinely amused. But seeing it on her face, knowing it was directed at me through a camera lens, made it look like something else entirely, something predatory. She held up the letter and mouthed 2 words. Nice try. Then she set the letter down, pulled out a lighter, and set fire to all the documents in the storage unit. Within seconds, the smoke alarm was screaming and the sprinkler system kicked on, but Rebecca didn't run. She stood there in the spray of water, watching the papers burn, watching our trap quite literally go up in smoke. She knew, I whispered. How did she know? Rachel's face had gone pale. Michael. He must have warned her. He must have told her it was a trap. But that didn't make sense. We'd been watching the storage unit since 5 a.m. No one had entered before Rebecca. No one had called out a warning. Unless Michael had contacted her before we even sent the message. Unless he'd figured out what we were planning before we'd even done it. We need to get out of here, Rachel said, already packing up the laptop. If she knew about the trap, she knows we're here watching. We need to leave. Now. But as we opened the door to our unit, we found the hallway blocked. Michael stood there, and he wasn't alone. 2 men I'd never seen before flanked him, both large, both wearing expressions that made it clear they weren't here for a friendly conversation. Hello, Diane. Rachel. Michael's voice was calm, almost pleasant. I think it's time we all had a real conversation, don't you? Get out of our way. Rachel's voice was steady, but I could see her hand shaking as she held the laptop. This is over, Michael. We have everything on camera, Rebecca breaking in, destroying evidence, all of it. Even if she knew it was a trap, she still committed a crime. Did she, though? Michael pulled out his phone and showed us the screen. It was the camera feed from Unit 347, except now it showed nothing. Just static. Funny thing about digital evidence, it's so easy to corrupt. A simple electromagnetic pulse device readily available online for about $200, and suddenly all those recordings are just noise, no video, no proof, no crime. My heart sank. Of course Rebecca wouldn't have just walked into our trap without a plan. Of course she would have found a way to erase the evidence. But we saw her, I said. We watched her break in. You saw someone break in. Someone wearing black. Clothes and a hood that covered their face. Could have been anyone. Could have been Rachel, for all we know. In fact, I think that's exactly what the police will conclude when they review what's left of the security footage. Rachel's grip on my arm tightened. What do you want, Michael? I want you to understand that this game is over. Rebecca has been very patient with you both. She's tried to be reasonable, but you keep pushing, keep digging, keep trying to expose something that no one will believe anyway. So we're going to make this very simple. You're going to stop. You're going to destroy whatever evidence you think you have. You're going to forget Rebecca exists. And in exchange, Rebecca will let you keep living your lives. And if we don't? The question came out braver than I felt. Michael's expression hardened. Then Rebecca stops being patient. And trust me, you don't want to see what happens when she stops being patient. One of the men beside Michael stepped forward, and I saw something in his jacket. A gun. Not pointed at us, not threatening overtly, but there. A promise of what could happen if we didn't comply. This is insane, Rachel said. You can't just threaten us like this. We'll go to the police. We'll tell them everything. And say what? That you have a sister you've never mentioned before? That she's been impersonating you? Where's your proof, Rachel? The DNA tests that show 3 people exist but can't prove which one is which. The documents that could just as easily be forged by you. The testimony of a sister who everyone thinks is mentally unstable. He was right. Every piece of evidence we had could be explained away. Could be dismissed as the paranoid delusions of someone who'd finally cracked under pressure. Rebecca had been so careful, so methodical, that even with everything we knew, we couldn't prove it. There has to be something, I said desperately. Some way to prove this, some evidence she can't corrupt or destroy. There isn't. Michael's voice was almost sympathetic. Rebecca spent 5 years preparing for this. 5 years learning everything about both of you. 5 years eliminating every possible way you could fight back. She's thought of everything, Diane. Everything. The only choice you have now is whether you walk away quietly or whether this gets messy. Rachel's hand slipped into her pocket. I saw Michael tense, saw the man with the gun shift his weight. But when Rachel's hand emerged, she wasn't holding a weapon. She was holding a small USB drive. You're wrong, she said quietly. Rebecca didn't think of everything. She made one mistake. One tiny mistake that's going to cost her everything. Michael's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? 3 years ago, when Rebecca first started impersonating Diane, she had to provide identification to open a new bank account. Real identification, with Diane's social security number, Diane's birth certificate, everything. But the bank required a biometric scan, a retinal scan for high-value accounts. Rebecca provided one, thinking she was safe because identical twins and triplets have different retinal patterns. The scan can't be faked. Rachel held up the USB drive. This contains the retinal scan Rebecca provided when she opened that account. And I have Diane's medical records from her eye doctor, including her retinal scans from every checkup for the past 10 years. They don't match, Michael. They're close because we're identical triplets, but they're not the same. And retinal scans are admissible in court as proof of identity. They're considered foolproof. I saw the moment Michael realized what this meant. Saw the calculation in his eyes as he understood that all of Rebecca's careful planning, all of her meticulous identity theft, could be undone by one biological fact she couldn't change. Give me that drive, he said, his voice low and dangerous. No. Rachel closed her fist around it. This is our insurance, our proof that Rebecca exists and that she's been committing fraud. You can destroy cameras, you can corrupt files, you can explain away documents, but you can't explain away biology. Rachel, give him the drive. The voice came from behind Michael, and we all turned. Rebecca stood there, and seeing her was like looking at a photograph of myself. Everything was identical. The hair, the face, the way she stood. But there was something in her eyes that made her different, something cold and calculating that I'd never seen in my own reflection. "Hello, sisters," Rebecca said, and her voice was mine too. The same pitch, the same cadence, the same slight accent I'd picked up from growing up in Boston. "I think it's time we finally had a proper family reunion." Michael and his men stepped aside, letting Rebecca walk forward. She looked at me first, studying me with an intensity that made me want to look away. Diane, the successful one, the one who got the good marriage, the nice house, the comfortable life, the one Mom and Dad kept. Then she turned to Rachel. And Rachel, the struggling one, the one who never quite managed to get her life together, the one who works minimum wage and lives paycheck to paycheck, the one they kept instead of me. "They didn't know," Rachel said. "Mom and Dad didn't know what you would become. They couldn't afford 3 babies. They made an impossible choice." "They made the wrong choice." Rebecca's voice was sharp. "They should have kept me. I was the strongest. I was the smartest. I was the one who deserved the life you two got to live. But instead, I got 18 years in the foster system. 18 years of being moved from home to home, of being abused and neglected and forgotten. 18 years of watching other kids get adopted while I stayed behind because I was too old, too damaged, too broken." "So you decided to take revenge," I said. "You decided to steal our lives because yours wasn't good enough." "I decided to take what should have been mine from the beginning." Rebecca moved closer, and I could smell her perfume. It was the same brand I wore. "Of course it was." "Everything you have, Diane, I earned. I worked twice as hard, sacrificed twice as much, planned twice as carefully. And now I have your house, your money, your husband. I have your life. The life that should have been mine if Mom and Dad had made the right choice." "You can't have my identity," I said. "That USB drive proves you're not me, proves you've been committing fraud. Once we show that to the police, to a judge, everything you've stolen gets taken away." Rebecca smiled, and it was the scariest thing I'd ever seen. "You think I came here without a plan? You think I'm stupid enough to let one USB drive destroy everything I've built?" She nodded to Michael, and suddenly I was being grabbed from behind. One of the men had moved while I was focused on Rebecca, had gotten behind me without me noticing. I struggled, but he was too strong. Rachel screamed and tried to run, but the other man caught her easily, pinning her arms behind her back. The USB drive fell from her hand and skittered across the floor. Rebecca bent down and picked it up, holding it up to the light like it was a precious gem. "Thank you for this. I've been looking for any copies of that retinal scan for months. Now I can destroy it and eliminate the last piece of evidence that proves I'm not you." "There are backups," Rachel gasped out, still struggling. "Multiple backups. You'll never find them all." "Won't I?" Rebecca pulled out her phone and showed us a series of messages. "While you two were watching me burn fake documents in that storage unit, my team was accessing your lawyer's office, your safe deposit box, and your cloud servers. Every backup you created, every copy you made, we found them all. This is the last one. Once I destroy this, there's no proof that I'm not Diane Holloway. No proof that Rebecca Morrison even exists." My blood ran cold. "How did you know where everything was?" "Because Rachel told me. Every time she backed up a file, every time she stored a document, she left a digital trail. Email confirmations, cloud storage notifications, lawyer correspondence. All of it went through her email, and all of it was monitored by spyware I installed on her computer 6 months ago. I've known everything you were planning since the moment you started planning it." Rachel's face went white. "That's impossible. I checked for spyware. I used security software." "Security software I designed. Software I gave you on that USB drive last Christmas, remember? The one I said was a collection of family photos. You plugged it into your computer and infected yourself. You've been working for me this whole time, and you didn't even know it." The betrayal on Rachel's face was devastating. Everything she'd worked for, every plan she'd made, Rebecca had known about it, had been one step ahead the entire time. "So what now?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "Now you both disappear," Rebecca said simply. "Tragic accident. 2 sisters on a road trip, car goes off a cliff. By the time anyone finds the bodies, they'll be too damaged to identify properly. And since I'm Diane Holloway, since I have all the legal documentation, since I have the husband and the house and the life, no one will question it. Why would they? As far as the world is concerned, Diane will still be alive. The only people who'll be dead are Rachel and an unnamed passenger. Maybe a friend, maybe a hitchhiker who can say. You won't get away with this." But even as I said it, I knew she already had. She'd thought of everything, planned for everything, eliminated every possible threat. We were beaten. "I already have gotten away with it." Rebecca nodded to the men holding us. "Take them to the car. Make sure no one sees, and drive carefully. We don't want any accidents. At least, not yet." As they started dragging us toward the exit, I looked at Rachel, my sister, my real sister, the one who'd tried to save me and had lost everything in the attempt. "I'm sorry," Rachel whispered. "I'm so sorry. I thought I could beat her." But before I could respond, before the men could get us out of the building, the door at the end of the hallway burst open and a voice rang out that made everyone freeze. "Federal agents! Nobody move!" The hallway erupted into chaos. The men holding Rachel and me immediately let go, their hands shooting up in surrender. Michael spun toward the door, his face draining of color, but Rebecca just stood there, calm, composed, like she'd been expecting this. 6 federal agents in tactical gear poured into the hallway, weapons drawn, voices overlapping as they shouted commands. "Hands where we can see them! Down on the ground! Now!" Everyone complied except Rebecca. She looked at the lead agent, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen everything, and smiled that same terrible smile I'd seen too many times today. "Agent Morrison," Rebecca said pleasantly, "I was wondering when you'd arrive." The agent's expression didn't change. "Rebecca Ann Morrison, you're under arrest for identity theft, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and about 15 other charges that we'll go over at the federal building. You have the right to remain silent." "Oh, I'm well aware of my rights. After all, I studied them extensively before I began this operation 5 years ago. Tell me, Agent Morrison, any relation?" "It's such a common last name, but you never know." The agent ignored her, nodding to the other agents. They moved forward with handcuffs, securing Rebecca, Michael, and the 2 men. I looked at Rachel, confusion and relief warring in my chest. "I don't understand. How did they know to come here?" Rachel's legs gave out, and she sank to the floor, tears streaming down her face. "I called them. 3 months ago, when I first realized how deep Rebecca's operation went, I knew we couldn't do this alone. I contacted the FBI's fraud division and told them everything. They've been investigating ever since, but Rebecca said she had spyware on your computer. She knew everything we were planning. She knew everything I wanted her to know." Rachel looked up at me, and through the tears, I saw something else. Pride, triumph. The computer she was monitoring, the emails she was reading, the plans she thought she was discovering, it was all fake. I created a second laptop, one she didn't know about, and used that for all my real communication with the FBI. Everything on my regular computer was theater, a performance designed to make Rebecca think she was winning. Agent Morrison walked over to us, holstering her weapon. "Ms. Holloway, both of you, are you injured?" I shook my head, still trying to process what was happening. "No, we're fine, but I don't understand. If you've been investigating for 3 months, why wait until now to arrest her?" "Because we needed her to incriminate herself. Identity theft cases are complicated. especially when the perpetrator is an identical triplet. We needed Rebecca to not just steal your identity, but to actively threaten you, to demonstrate that she knew exactly what she was doing and was willing to go to criminal extremes to protect her fraud. What we recorded in the last 20 minutes gives us everything we need to put her away for a very long time. Recorded? Agent Morrison pointed to Rachel's laptop, which was still on the floor where she'd dropped it. Your sister has been wearing a wire for the past 3 months. Every conversation, every threat, every admission Rebecca made. We have it all. Including her confession just now about monitoring your computer, destroying evidence, and planning to murder you both and stage it as an accident. I looked at Rachel with new eyes. My sister, who I'd thought was fragile and struggling, had been running a counter-operation against a master manipulator for months. Had been brave enough to wear a wire, to put herself in danger, to risk everything to bring Rebecca down. Why didn't you tell me? I asked softly. Rachel wiped her eyes. Because I couldn't risk it. If you'd known, your reactions wouldn't have been genuine. Rebecca is too smart. She would have sensed something was off. You had to really believe we were in danger. You had to really think we were losing. It was the only way to get her to fully reveal herself. Agent Morrison helped us both to our feet. We'll need you to come to the federal building to give your statements, but first, there's something you should know. Rebecca wasn't working alone. Her network is extensive. Over the past 5 years, she's stolen the identities of 11 other people, not just you two. Women who looked similar enough to her that she could impersonate them. Women whose lives she destroyed systematically before moving on to the next target. You two are the first ones who fought back, the first ones who survived. 11 other people. 11 other lives destroyed. I felt sick. Where are they now? The other victims? 3 are dead, staged accidents, just like what Rebecca was planning for you. The other 8 are alive but scattered across the country, living under new identities because Rebecca had so thoroughly taken over their legal identities that they couldn't prove who they were anymore. But now that we have Rebecca in custody, now that we have proof of her methods, we can start helping them reclaim their lives. You two saved them as much as you saved yourselves. Rebecca was being led down the hallway in handcuffs, but she turned back to look at us one last time. This isn't over, she called out. I have lawyers. I have resources. I have contingency plans you can't even imagine. You think you've won, but you haven't. I always have another move. Your contingency plans were frozen 3 hours ago, Agent Morrison said calmly. Every account, every asset, every fake identity. We found them all. The only place you're going is a federal prison. And given the severity of your crimes, you'll be I should have been from the beginning, to both of you. I looked at this woman who was a stranger and yet somehow familiar. I could see traces of myself in her face, in her eyes, in the way she carried herself. She'd given us life and then given us away. She'd made terrible choices that had led to all of this pain. But she'd also saved us. She'd also stopped Rebecca. She'd also been brave enough to face the consequences of her past. I don't know if I can call you Mom, I said honestly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'd like to know you. I'd like to understand why you made the choices you did. I'd like to try. Agent Morrison nodded, accepting the boundary I'd set. That's more than I deserve. Thank you. We stood there, 3 women connected by blood and trauma and choices made decades ago, in a storage facility hallway that smelled of smoke and water from the fire Rebecca had set. It wasn't a happy ending. Too much had been lost, too much had been broken. But it was an ending, and more. Importantly, it was a beginning. Over the next few months, the legal machinery ground slowly forward. Rebecca was tried and convicted on 17 separate charges. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence, including the recordings from Rachel's wire, testimony from the other victims, and financial records that showed the full scope of her operation. She was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. Michael got 15 years for conspiracy and accessory to fraud. The two hired men got 10 years each. The divorce between Michael and me was annulled. The court ruled that since Michael had been married to someone impersonating me, the marriage had never been legally valid. All of the property settlements were reversed. I got my house back, my accounts back, my credit back. It took nearly a year, but piece by piece, I reclaimed my life. Rachel got something even more important. She got validation. After years of being told she was paranoid, that her concerns were overblown, that she was imagining things, she had proof that she'd been right all along, proof that she wasn't crazy, proof that she was, in fact, remarkably brave and clever and strong. And Agent Morrison, our biological mother, became a part of our lives. Slowly, carefully, respecting our boundaries. She told us about her life, about the choices she'd made, about the guilt she'd carried for 3 decades. We told her about our lives, about growing up not knowing we had a third sister, about the parents who'd raised us and loved us, even though they'd lied about something so fundamental. It wasn't a fairy tale reunion. There was too much pain, too much history, too many years of absence. But it was real, and sometimes real is more valuable than perfect. I learned something through all of this. I learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish. When Rachel first showed up at my house without permission, my instinct had been to protect my space, to say no, to refuse to let someone take what was mine without asking. And that instinct had been right. Rebecca had been counting on me to be accommodating, to be generous, to put family first no matter what. She'd been counting on me to be the kind of person who would never say no to a sister in need. But by setting that boundary, by insisting on respect and consent and consideration, I'd forced Rebecca to reveal herself. I'd created the circumstances that led to her arrest. I'd saved not just my own life, but Rachel's life, and the lives of 8 other women who were still out there trying to piece their identities back together. Saying no doesn't make you cruel. It makes you honest. It makes you strong. It makes you someone who values yourself enough to protect what's yours. And there's nothing selfish about that. It's survival. It's self-respect. It's the difference between being a victim and being a survivor. A year after Rebecca's arrest, Rachel and I stood outside the house I'd finally reclaimed as mine. The house Rebecca had stolen. The house I'd fought to get back. "Are you sure about this?" Rachel asked. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready." "I'm ready." I unlocked the door and we walked inside together. The house was empty now. I'd had everything removed, every piece of furniture that Rebecca had touched, every decoration she'd chosen, every trace of her existence. It was just walls and floors and empty rooms. A blank canvas. "What are you going to do with it?" Rachel asked. "I'm going to sell it. And with the money, we're going to start something new, a foundation, an organization that helps victims of identity theft reclaim their lives. We'll call it the Morrison Foundation, in honor of all 3 of us. Rebecca, who showed us what happens when pain turns to vengeance. You, who showed me what it means to be brave. And our mother, who showed us that it's never too late to try to make things right." Rachel smiled, and it was genuine. The first truly happy smile I'd seen from her in months. "I think that's a perfect idea." We walked through the empty rooms one last time, saying goodbye to the life I'd thought I wanted, the life Rebecca had coveted enough to steal, the life that had turned out to be not nearly as important as I'd believed, because in the end, what mattered wasn't the house or the possessions or the perfect image I'd maintained. What mattered was family, real family, the kind that tells the truth even when it's hard, the kind that fights for you even when it's dangerous, the kind that respects you enough to ask permission before moving into your space. Rachel and I walked out of that empty house together, sisters by blood and by choice, ready to build something new from the ashes of everything Rebecca had burned down. And as I locked the door for the last time, I realized something. That question I'd asked when I first came home and found those expensive suitcases in my living room. Did you ask the owner of this house for permission? It hadn't just been about the house, it had been about my life, my identity, my right to control what belonged to me. And I'd answered that question, loudly, clearly, with a strength I hadn't known I possessed. No one gets to take what's yours without asking. Not family, not friends, not anyone. Your life is yours, your space is yours, your identity is yours, and you have every right to protect it. That's not selfishness. That's self-respect. That's dignity. That's the boundary that separates love from exploitation, family from manipulation, kindness from being used. Rebecca had taught me that lesson the hard way, but I'd learned it, and I would never forget it. As Rachel and I drove away from that house for the last time, heading toward a future we would build together on our own terms, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the fragile peace of ignorance, but the solid peace of someone who knows exactly who they are and what they're worth. Someone who will never again apologize for taking up space. Someone who understands that the most important permission you'll ever need is the permission you give yourself. Permission to say no. Permission to set boundaries. Permission to choose yourself without guilt. And that's a permission no one can take away. Not even someone who shares your face, your voice, your DNA. Because at the end of the day, you are the only owner of your life. And no one, absolutely no one, gets to move in without asking first.